The message this morning is Thresholds of Increasing Complexity. I'm Rev Michelle Scott Huffman. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the minister here at First Unitarian Universalist Church. Threshold, the sill of a door, the magnitude or intensity that must be exceeded for a certain reaction, phenomenon, result, or condition to occur or be manifested. A limit below which a stimulus causes no reaction, or a level, rate, or amount at which something comes into effect. The starting point of an experience, event, or venture. In my own life, I can remember particular thresholds where I found myself at a precipice, looking fearfully ahead into the void of some unknown future and looking back longingly at a romanticized past that clearly wasn't all that, because here I was at the edge of something different and hopefully better, beckoning me to cross over, inviting me to notice the exact moment where there was a shift between a stimulus causing no reaction and a level at which something comes into effect. I won't bore you today with the details of all those specific moments, but I will say that throughout my life, those moments have seemed to become more and more complex, requiring more of me, calling to a more evolved version of myself than the one that crossed the last threshold. In the field of education, there has emerged a relatively new discipline called Big History. The aim of the Big History project is to link different areas of knowledge into one unified story that provides us with a deeper awareness of our past, and thus, hopefully, prepares us better to shape our future in a positive way. A popular concept in Big History is thresholds of increasing complexity, which sorts the events of millions of years of human history into time periods marked by particular threshold moments. The 8 thresholds named are the Big Bang, stars light up, new chemical elements, Earth and solar system, life on Earth, collective learning, agriculture, and the modern revolution. I struggle a little with the anthropocentrism of those categories, or the interpretation of the history of the world in terms of human values and experiences. But if I were to be honest, I live a pretty anthropocentric existence myself, and I suppose we can really only tell the story from our human perspective. According to the Big History Project website, humans have powerful brains, precise language, and a knack for gathering, preserving, and sharing information. We use these skills to create entirely new forms of complexity, making us the most powerful force of change on the planet. I think our humanist friends here today might agree with that. So for the next 15 minutes or so, let's assume that it's true, that we are the most powerful force of change on the planet. What does that mean for us in this threshold moment? In the opening words today, Ryan read the first half of John O'Donohue's poem, A New Beginning. Here's the second half. Then the delight, when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back, learn to find ease in risk. Soon you'll be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Some would say that our country and possibly humanity at large is approaching a threshold moment. In this country, we started, at least in theory, with the premise that all men, are created equal. And we did mean men. To be sure, we've made some progress on expanding understandings of what it means to be human and an American and to have worth in this society. It's also clear that we have a long way to go. And there have been times throughout our history in which there have been movements and moments that demanded change, and some change has come, though always incomplete. But this feels like a different kind of moment. This is a moment where it's hard to keep up with the injustice that most needs our attention, where we try to focus on one issue like caring for the environment. And in our efforts to get that issue under control, we realize that we slide easily into ageism, ableism, and classism, dismissing the very real struggles of people living in poverty and the diminished choices that they have. We try to turn our attention then to those living in poverty, working to come up with solutions that are both realistic and lasting. And we find that we've stopped progressing in our work to be truly welcoming people, to people who are across the spectrum of sexualities and gender identities. And just when we get ourselves back on track with those efforts, there's yet another egregious example of the many ways that Black lives have not mattered in our society. And so rightfully, we shift our attention to the support of Black Lives Matter activists and to the dismantling of racist and white supremacist structures, including those that are a part of the governance of this church that we love. And even at the end of most days, we haven't made real, lasting, systemic change in any one area. We have instead become, and I'm coining this term today, jugglers for justice. And while juggling makes a nice sideshow, it doesn't change systems and it's not sustainable. This is a different kind of moment because it feels like it might require more work on our part than any previous moment if we truly want to live up to our values and into our principles. The fourth UU source, named in our opening this morning, is Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. In the Christian tradition, there's a story where Jesus is teaching his disciples in parables. He tells them a story about day laborers in a vineyard, and it's a story about equity versus equality and economic justice and about their biases. And at the end of the story, he gives them the line that sticks: "The last shall be first, and the first shall be last." When we are jugglers for justice, upholding one injustice while forgetting about the others, there is a constant jockeying for position of who's first and who's last. Once in a while, turning the tides and changing places, but in reality, it becomes an endless cycle of reversals. But Jesus did something that they didn't expect in his ministry. He set about to either reform or abolish the systems that created firsts and lasts, so that there might be a day he referred to as the kingdom of heaven, where everyone is first together. In other words, a day where the world acknowledges and lives by the first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I was thrilled a couple weeks ago to attend, even if virtually, my first Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. The workshops were fantastic and inspiring, and there were many wonderful speakers. I'd been making notes for this message at that point, so when the Ware lecturer started saying things that connected deeply with these thoughts, I got really excited. Naomi Klein is a Canadian author, social activist, and filmmaker known for her political analyses and criticism of corporate globalization and of capitalism, and is currently the Gloria Steinem Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies at Rutgers University. About this moment that we are living in, she said this: "We are living in an age of consequences for our extraction and abuse of the natural world and extraction and abuse of Black and brown bodies, deadly viruses leaping from animals to the humans who stole their habitat, cities burning as a result of injustice and pain. Our debts seem to be coming due all at once." We might be overwhelmed by that reality, But the next thing that she said was hopeful. And it's the reason I believe that we are currently at a collective threshold. A staggering number of people now grasp the scale of our interlocking crises and understand that small tweaks in our system are not going to get us to safety, not ecologically, not economically, not socially or politically. We who long for a different kind of society, one where we have respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, we are many. The forces bent on shredding that web of life are powerful, but they are few. Klein talked about what we've seen in this country since mid-March in terms of seismic shifts. She noted that the pandemic, at just 3.5 months old, has thrust the entire globe into an era of rapid and radical change to our individual habits, expectations and routines, government and fiscal policy, relationships between powerful nation states and the natural world around us. And she added that these rapid and radical shifts definitively put the lie to the idea that capitalist societies are incapable of seismic transformations on a deadline. Earlier this week, I read an article by Michael Fletcher at theundefeated.com entitled, "America is Facing a Reckoning Over Race, but We've Seen This Before." Like Naomi Klein in the Ware lecture, Fletcher also used the term seismic shift, stating that until recently, most of America saw the statistics about disproportionate arrest and incarceration rates of people of color and deep disparities in health outcomes for Black Americans compared to white, and were unmoved or apathetic. But since the world witnessed a Minneapolis police officer nonchalantly squeeze the life out of George Floyd by pressing his knee into his neck, there has been a seismic shift. In that same article, Reverend Dr. William Barber II, president of Repairers of the Breach and co-chair of the New Poor People's Campaign, is quoted as saying, "Something is fundamentally shifting. There is a consciousness awakening and you cannot put it back in the box." In recent months, we've learned not just that we personally can do things that we never imagined to stay well and connected, but also that the systems we exist in every day are also capable of change. I have to do my taxes next week, because rather than requiring my return on April 15th this year, that's the day that the IRS put money into my bank account. That was new. Millions of people learned that they could successfully work from home, even though for years their employer has claimed that their job required them to be in a particular place. We've learned that many of those meetings really could have been accomplished with an email or a phone call. And that when everybody finds themselves at home for an extended period of time, they might get to know their neighbors, look out for them, and even sing with them out their windows and across streets. And we've learned, as Naomi Klein shared, that the idea that we humans can't do what is required to confront the overlapping and intersecting crises in our world has always been a lie. We have what it takes to meet the challenge of this threshold moment. In fact, we are what it takes. What will we do to engage this moment and all of its simultaneous movements to ensure that history remembers it as a moment in which we crossed over and didn't retreat? On Friday, Stephanie and I, about 1,000 of my Facebook friends, and I don't know how many millions of other people watched the Broadway musical Hamilton, filmed with the original cast in 2016 and released for streaming this week on Disney+. Maybe you watched it too. One of my favorite songs from the musical and the graphic on the t-shirt that I bought for a ridiculous amount of money when I saw the show live in Tulsa says, "History has its eyes on you." Friends, history has its eyes on us. I think it's possible that humanity is at a threshold, that our society in particular is at a threshold, and that each of us, or perhaps In many different ways, all of us are at multiple thresholds in our lives right now. And it is true for many of us that it feels more complex than any threshold we've ever encountered before. So let's pause here at the threshold. Take a deep, centering breath together. And go there, wherever there is. For each of us, it will be a different place. We are all standing at the point where we are, with the experiences that we've had and the things that we have known that have formed us. Learning and progress is both individual and collective. There is room here for our individual struggles, our personal thresholds, and also for the momentum we find when we are all moving in the same direction toward justice, peace, and wholeness. And let us enter the next phase of this human and distinctly American experiment. The phase where nobody has to wait their turn for justice, because we understand that it is inextricably bound together. In the words of the great civil rights activist and organizer Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Our collective soul longs for the world as it can be, and the world needs us in this moment. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.